Welcome to the State of Affairs in partnership with Serbian Radio Chicago. We are having conversations that matter. And I am very, very excited tonight because I have a great guest. His name is Max Ukropina, and he hails from California, and he is running for one of California U.S. congressional seats. Max, welcome.
Thank you, Olga. Glad to be on. Really appreciate you having me.
This is very exciting, first of all, because the connection was obviously Ambassador Rick Grenell, who I worked closely with and who has endorsed you. So congratulations.
Thank you. I love the ambassador. He's a great man, great patriot. So I'm glad to have him in my corner. It means the world.
Absolutely. We are glad he is in your corner because I looked at that endorsement and then I looked at your last name and I sent a text to Rick and I'm like, we got to get to the bottom of this. Where is his last name from? And I couldn't sit still. And I was digging, and turns out, which is very exciting for our audience, that you are fifth generation Californian.
Yes.
Of American Serbian ancestry.
Definitely. Yeah, we are Serb. I'm a quarter Serb. And we've been probably one of the oldest Serb families in the States, and definitely in California.
So one of my team members from California said that on one of the churches in California is probably the last name either of your grandfather or great-grandfather. They were founders of the church.
Yes. Božidar Ukropina, he came here through Ellis Island, more than a century ago.
Wow.
And so he was one of the founders of that church. So one of the only last names without an itch at the end, but definitely, yeah, we're one of our proudest moments is that we helped start that church there.
That's amazing. And now in this election cycle, 2024, an extremely proud moment for all of us is that we have an American Serb running for a congressional seat. So tell me about the landscape of your district, because I know you have a tough battle.
Yes. So both the Republicans and the Democrats have already called this seat as essentially the number one seat to grab in this race. It's currently held by Katie Porter, who's a leftist Democrat, very leftist. She's leaving this seat to run for Senate to replace Dianne Feinstein. But they classify it as a purple seat. I think of it as still a very conservative seat, but has continued to lose to leftist Democrats just because we've had ineffective candidates that can't speak to the district. In terms of geography, this is in coastal Orange County. So some of your listeners may be familiar with the cities I'm about to name, but Seal Beach, Huntington Beach, Newport Beach, Laguna Beach, Irvine, and Costa Mesa in those entireties. It's where I'm from. It's my home, where we've been for multi-generations now. But it is a winnable seat for conservative America First Republicans that are bold enough to talk about the real issues and common sense, frankly, with what's happening. But it's
so what is the common sense that California seems especially to be lacking? Because I am in Florida, the free state of Florida, and obviously we all look at California as the poster child of crazy lately, which is really unfortunate. It's a beautiful state. It's a great state with some beautiful cities. But it's been turning worse and worse progressively. So what are some of the core issues that you are focusing on?
Yeah, it is sad. As you said, my family's been here for at least 5 generations, and this has been our home, and it'd be a lot easier for me to leave, but I'm willing to fight because it's the greatest state in the union from my perspective, and it has all the resources, amazing people, but unfortunately, only recently in the past couple decades, it's gone down the toilet, just because we've allowed the liberals and the leftists to really grab hold of this state and destroy it from within, and ruin it as a business climate, tax us up, and make it really expensive to live. I mean, that's the problem. It's the best place in the world from our perspective. Obviously, Florida is a wonderful place, but the top issues are very clear. for people in the district and in California, across the country. Right now, we're faced with a wide open border that is affecting everything. It's affecting everything. I went down to the border in December and met with Border Patrol here in San Diego sector, which is just, a couple miles or a couple hours south of here. And it's wide open. And I watched as people from all over the world just step over and they want asylum. And, you're an immigrant. My family is a family of immigrants. Immigrants are good. I think we want immigrants that are Americans and have the American mindset and want to be a part of it and realize how wonderful this country is. But right now, we've let in probably, some say, close to 10 million people within the Biden administration. Some we've never even met, and the ones we have met, we've just given them a free pass to do whatever they want until their asylum court date is probably 5-7 years out, if they even show up on that date. Really terrible. And then with them, since we don't know who they are, we can't check their criminal record. So a lot of these are criminals. Most aren't, but we know above zero are, as we keep on catching known terrorists at our borders. Those are the ones we catch. And then with them, they bring, tons and tons of fentanyl, which is killing my generation, 18 to 45, greater than anyone else. We're losing hundreds of thousands a year. It's far eclipsing all of our war deaths as a nation. It's just nuts. And the Biden administration and we're seeing this weak Republicans don't want to do anything about it. And the reality is on our border, if you're complacent, you're complicit. So it's a top issue here because it's affecting our housing, employment, and all these things. And Gavin Newsom, our governor, wants to give away free health care to everyone that's come illegally. And then the other top issue really is inflation. I mean, coastal Orange County is one of the most expensive places in the world. And even though it's also one of the wealthiest, everyone is scraping by because inflation is the tax that we see every single day. And when they're rising everything, grocery prices, gas prices, rental prices, everything, even at the fast food joint, right? You can't get a burger for basically under $10 now. And the number one and nearly only culprit of that is the federal government, who continues to print money, borrow money, and spend money. We're $34 trillion in debt. I mean, this is Congress's fault. This is Biden's fault. And we need to fix this stuff because it's affecting everyone everywhere. And
it is.
I'm just ticked off because no one seems to want to change anything.
And so speaking of inflation and speaking of just general money and financial issues that we are having, a really hot current topic that's now being filibustered is this new package that we are trying to send to Ukraine. And I know that a lot of our listeners are very focused on foreign policy, and it will be something that I really want to discuss with you, particularly Balkans area. But what are your thoughts on the Ukraine war, or limited operation, as they call it, and the continued funding and essentially money laundering machine by both sides, as you said, Democrats and Republicans? And when do we stop and start taking care of our own people, our Americans?
Hopefully today, Olga. I mean, great topic, great questions. Hopefully today is when we realize that we don't have the money. We can't afford it. I mean, the reality is that we can't keep cutting checks to these countries without an audit. I mean, you talk about the grift and the corruption that's happening in Ukraine. We need to audit where this money is going if we continue to send the money. But I'm from the part of, I'm not willing to spend another dime on anybody unless we fix our border. I mean, we have millions of people coming over and then hundreds of thousands dying. So if you were blind and just looked at those numbers as they were, we would be at total war right now at our southern border and within our country. And so I'm glad to see several senators and much of Congress putting their feet down saying, no, we're not doing this crap. We're going to stop it right here because we need to use the leverage and figure out our border. And then when it comes to actually, these other foreign policy things, I'd like to have those discussions, But I'm not willing to have it. If I was there in Congress, I wouldn't be willing to have that discussion until we actually get the stuff done. And I'm not in favor of any of these half measures that's going on right now. We're going to give a little bit of border money here and then a lot of money to Ukraine and a lot of money to all these other countries. Like, we have one country. We need to be America first before we do anything else. So we have to hold strong. And I'm not an extremist on this. I'm a normal person.
Right. And I believe that 90% of Americans are probably in the same boat, and they worry about their own livelihoods and their own economic prosperity here, their own families, their own children's education. But here we are consistently being told that we must protect borders of foreign nations and that we must maintain their sovereignty. Well, we're not maintaining sovereignty, first of all, of the United States. But then on top of it, and I just want to get your opinion, although we don't need to go deeply into this, there's still plenty of time. But the double standard, where you are familiar with what happened in Kosovo in the 1990s, we did not care about Serbia's sovereignty, but now we care about Ukrainian sovereignty. And the worst part of all of it, we don't care about American sovereignty.
Yeah, I mean, look, that's the problem with these neocons, or whatever you want to call it, these people that love starting wars, is they pick and choose. There are terrible things happening all over the world with different wars, and we only choose certain ones with certain people. And so we really need to take a step back and say, why are people within our own government on both sides of the aisle trying to choose sides? And we should be letting the world decide most of its problems. I mean, we can't afford, with blood and treasure, to be sticking our nose in every single thing that happens. That's how we get deeper and deeper into wars we don't want to get involved in. And God forbid we choose a side which we realize is the bad one. I think that's the thing we can't seem to realize sometimes, is all these things are politically motivated. We don't know all the information. And so the best foreign policy is to keep our nose out of things and be the strongest military we can, and make sure we have the strongest trade worldwide, which is the greatest peacekeeper of all time, is having strong trade within nations, normalizing affairs.
Absolutely. And that is something that Ambassador Granell actually was working on. And President Trump deeply believed that some of these stalemates and frozen conflicts did not need to be resolved bureaucratically, because bureaucracies didn't really resolve anything 20, 30 years now. But the economic establishment and strong economies solve these issues.
They have. They always have, and they always will. I mean, strong economic ties are not just dollars and cents. They make people get along and get to know each other and mingle and become friends. I'm a business guy, as is Donald Trump, and we know that strong economic ties keep us out of war. It's very, very simple things, and that's what I'm grateful for Ambassador Granell and President Trump for normalizing relations in the Balkans. And it is, imagine a world where that was replicated throughout, right? We had world peace. So,
absolutely,
mostly world peace under Trump, and none of it was instigated, or we had no wars instigated by us or people we didn't like. And we could go back to that if we have real leadership and people that aren't nuts and want to start a war with every other person.
Well, that seems to be the policy of crazy, and on both sides, as you said. They've never seen a war that they didn't like.
Yeah.
And it seems
I can't stand war.
I understood, and I know again that most Americans are right there with you. And I hope those ones in your district will recognize this and come out and vote when the time comes. I want to talk about another issue, because again, California sometimes seems like a poster child for a lot of these crazy liberal Marxist ideas, and a lot of them are hitting our children.
Oh, yeah.
And you are a father to be. Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm 24. Not me. My wife is 24 weeks pregnant.
Wonderful. And congratulations to her as well.
Thank you.
But looking into the future, as a parent, as most of us are parents, what is happening in our schools? What is happening with our education? And why is it that the leftist liberal ideologues are so adamant about indoctrinating our children in sexual, deviant propaganda like manner that we've never seen before?
Yeah, it's crazy. Um, I'm a product of public schools. I went to Coronel High School here in Orange County, just down the street from where I live now. And I'm very proud of that. My wife is as well. She's a public school kid. And I think conservatives, or frankly, normal people, have become complacent with our schools. And we've just watched as these liberal ideologues started taking over our school boards, started taking over the classroom within teachers. And now it's swinging really hard left because now we're aware of what's going on. And they put this wedge in between parent and pupil, and they're no longer focused on actual things that matter, reading, writing, and arithmetic, and teaching kids about actual history and all these things. And
Yes.
they've got this poison in this mindset that's just trying to take over our kids. And it's the sad, the terrible thing is it got really bad during COVID, and all of our students, it got the short end of that stick, and now they're behind, and our test scores are down, our readiness is way down. But at least the kids know their pronouns. But it's crazy. So it makes me very, very sad because not everyone can afford to pull their kids out of school. I think a lot of us conservatives just like, oh, you can homeschool your kids. Oh, you can send your kids to private school. Oh, you can send your kids to parochial school. Most can't.
Yes, I
They
agree.
have dual income households and they're just scraping by, or they don't have, or the schools are full in their neighborhood and they can't drive them by. Our public schools are a public good, and we need to be pushing back. I'm
Absolutely.
federal office, and so most of what needs to happen is at the local school board level, and
Okay.
even lower than that. So we have to make sure we take over those seats. Those are arguably more important than the congressional seat that I'm running for, because those have an outsized influence on our kids.
Hmm.
What I can do from Congress is I can make sure that people in Washington don't have a say in our children's education. It does not, it should not, constitutionally, education should not be a federal issue. It should be pushed back to the states and as close to local control as possible so you can have school choice and all these wonderful things. We can remove the Department of Education from the federal government. It's very constitutional. It does not need to be there, along with many other departments in Washington need to go.
Yes.
That's one thing I've been parroting since the beginning, is that should just be gone. I mean, in California,
Hmm.
we'll still have to deal with the state, but at least Washington will be removed from that situation. And then there's some things we can do is pass a national parents' rights bill where all of us parents have at least the right to have transparency in what our children are being taught. I think that's the really scary part in all of this is the leftists have made us believe that parents are the enemy, and
Yes.
that our teachers and administrators and their counselors and all this stuff know better than the parent on what they should be decided, which is not just wrong, it's evil. The parents know them best, and some teacher that's known my kid for 2 weeks in a social studies class doesn't know what's going on at home and doesn't
Right.
know what the history of my child is. And there's never a circumstance, or rarely a circumstance, right, where a kid should be separated from his parent. So it's just really bad. And so I think I'm very optimistic that people are waking up to this, and we need to do everything in our power to empower our parents so they can empower
Sure.
their kids.
Absolutely. I want to talk to you about something else, and it's increasingly hot topic because we look at what's happening around the country, not only in California, but California has a lot of it. Especially going back to 2020 and the so-called summer of love and burning of our cities and the complete destruction of law and order. And California really truly suffers with this. Aside from illegal immigration, we have our domestic problems here that have been kind of boiling over, and a lot of them are always based in racial issues. How do you see, and granted, Orange County is a bit different compared to the rest of the state and other areas and big cities. If we look at LA and Chicago and Baltimore and New York, and you can't even get on DL anymore, somebody is going to either beat you up or rape you, or it's becoming very dangerous to live in certain parts of the United States. How do we cross this really dangerous place that we are in? Because it seems like it takes one little trigger for an all-out riot again.
Yeah. So thanks for bringing this up, Olga. I've lived in my 20s. I've lived in Chicago, New York, DC, LA. This was a long time ago, but I was a young guy. And I took the tube, or I took the L, or took the red line every day to get around for work. And now I don't know if I would. Which is very scary. It makes me very sad, because these leftist ideas have destroyed my favorite American cities. Absolutely destroyed them. And they continue to put their hands up and say, "Oh, it's not our fault." It's like, well, like a lot of times people say we need new ideas. I actually don't agree. I most of the time, you see it in California, they try to bring in new ideas into things, and that's what breaks us. We're not in some startup land. We need,
as they say, the road to hell is paved with good ideas.
With great ideas or good ideas.
Yeah.
So the things that work in governance at the local level, at the state level, at the federal level, have worked in the past and will work for millennia into the future. As you mentioned, Orange County is a wonderful place because it's this little, we call it the orange curtain, because it's safe here. And even during the Summer of Love, as you lovingly called it, we didn't have any, or very, very, very little violence or property destroyed, because we have strong law enforcement here. We have a great DA, Todd Spitzer, great sheriff, and amazing police departments nearly in every city, or every single city. So we didn't have that. They came in, they didn't destroy it, because if they assembled and did terrible things, we threw them in jail, which is what you have to do. You cross the line over into LA, and it was and still is a complete hellscape, which unfortunately I lived there too, and I wish it was better, but it's been destroyed from within. We need to have law and order in this country. If we want to be a free people, which we absolutely deserve to be, we also need to have a rule of law. We can't just have a complete libertine society where we can do whatever we want. We need to have rule of law. And the thing is, it just wasn't this way a few years ago.
Nope.
We used to be a great harmonious society where, racial tensions were at their lowest. This was not a thing that I grew up with. And now they're putting it forefront, and it's very sad. As a Christian, I know we're all the same. I know we are, the only difference between all of us is men and women. The rest is just a difference of skin color, and it's only skin deep. God fearfully and wonderfully made us to be all his children. We are not, we are no different than that. And it makes me very sad that many people in our society try to define us differently just by the way we look, which I think is very evil. And we need to push back on that.
And that seems to be the playbook that the liberals consistently use. They can divide us in every small group and pin us against one another while they are consistently profiting. I want to ask you one more thing, and I think this is really, really important, especially because you are a candidate, and we are, I would say, in an existential election year. I don't know if we get another go at this. With the presidential election and everything else that's coming up. Some people claim that we may even not get to the election, but let's leave that subject for another time. However, election integrity, not a lot has changed since 2020. in many states, including California. How confident are you? Because again, we need to rally our troops. We need to rally the voters. We need to get that vote out. But do people really believe anymore in our democratic process? And how do we get them to believe it again?
Yeah, great question. So right now I'm in the middle of my primary. So the actual date of the primary is March 5th.
Okay.
People have been voting for me now for over a week. Everyone in the state that is registered to vote, or was registered to vote for that rather, has gotten a paper ballot in their mail, alive or dead, in the state or
Okay.
not. So my election for this primary is open. We're planning to win by great margin in the primary. This same exact thing is going to happen in November in California, where we don't vote by precinct anymore. We vote at these ballot centers, whatever you want, voting centers, and everyone has that mail-in ballot. We have to change that. It was only a few years ago in this state where we didn't have massive everyone's included mail-in ballots. You voted on election day, and it took, you basically have a sworn affidavit, meaning you're going to have out of the country to vote absentee.
Sure.
So I am a data guy. I have a tech background, business guy background.
Okay.
At the vulnerabilities at my state and county level, you can easily do funny business there. If you wanted to, you could, from a pretty simple standpoint. I can't stand that. We need to push back on this stuff. My race, we're going to win by margin. So we're going to do it right. But we have to put our efforts as conservatives, as people. About half the population doesn't, or half the population, maybe even more, doesn't trust their votes. We have to vote. Absolutely. Please vote. But we need to put our efforts in changing things and going backwards, because it can be messed with if you were half decent at this stuff. There's just too many vulnerabilities with chains of custody to happen. And so we need to win by elections by having great candidates like myself. But two, we have to have elections where everyone trusts it. This should not be even a question in your interview. So I hope to be back in a year's time and say, Olga, look, we changed it. We were able to put pressure on the county and the state to change this, so we don't have to complain and moan about this. I think that's what we need to constantly say is, hey, people on the other side of this issue, do you really want us to continue to complain? Or as good Americans, do you want us to be able to trust our elections? And so that's my answer.
And absolutely, you're right. Voter and election integrity should be a nonpartisan issue, essentially. Every decent American should want the same thing ultimately, which is why we are hoping that a lot of our listeners, we have a great big community in California, will come out for your primary. Now they're going to get to know you through this interview.
Right.
Of course, with the Serbs for Trump, we are now giving you our absolute endorsement. And we are happy to support you. We are going to talk about some events that we can put together for you in California, and hopefully we are going to win this thing. Anything you would like to say that I may have missed?
Thank you, Olga. I will take the Serbs for Trump endorsement gladly. It was a great honor. So good to have Serbs for Max. That is fantastic. I know
absolutely.
My family very proud and glad to be, representing the American Serb community here, as well as others. So thank you very much.
Absolutely.
And to all the listeners out there, whether in the district or across the country, they can go to our website, max4oc.com. You can check out all of our stuff there, learn more. Please donate. We'll take all your nickels and dimes and we'll use it extremely wisely. But yeah, go to our website or our other socials. You can find us there. But we're in the primary.
We will have all of that information as part of this interview. And I thank you again. And I'm telling you, we are very thrilled that you are running, and we can't wait to see you win.
Thank you. Thank you very much.